You know, some of the world's most bustling, incredibly powerful cities didn't just slowly fade away over the centuries. They were completely shut off, buried, or erased almost overnight. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into exactly why 15 of these incredible cities disappeared forever. We're looking at places that were once proud, wealthy, and absolutely full of life, but today, they're nothing more than silent streets and empty, echoing buildings.
So to understand how a whole city just vanishes, we really have to look at the three overwhelming forces that completely empty them out. We're talking economic collapse, war and conflict, and natural disasters. We're going to count down 15 of the most dramatic abandonments in history, building all the way up to our number one spot, which is literally the capital of a country, with absolutely nobody left inside it.
All right, let's jump straight into our first group, economics and shifting borders. These are the places that were just left in the dust when the money dried up or the borders shifted right out from under them.
It is honestly staggering how fast an economic powerhouse can empty out once its primary resource is gone. Take Kolmanskop in Namibia, for instance. This was a diamond boomtown so insanely wealthy that it had the very first X-ray station in the southern hemisphere. And get this, it was mostly just to check if miners were swallowing diamonds to smuggle them out. But today, desert sand literally pours right through its grand abandoned doorways. Or look at Bodie, California, a wild gold rush town famous for being utterly lawless. The second the gold dried up, it became an instant ghost town. And then we have Japan's Hashima Island. This place was built entirely around undersea coal mining and was once one of the most densely packed places on Earth. We're talking over 5,000 people crammed onto a tiny rock. When that mine shut down, every single person left. Now it's just this haunting, claustrophobic concrete maze standing completely alone in the middle of the ocean.
But you know, economic collapse isn't always about a mining bust. Sometimes it's just sheer hubris. In the late 16th century, Fatehpur Sikri was built to be this grand imperial royal capital in India. It was stunning, made of this beautiful red sandstone. The fatal flaw? The architect completely miscalculated the water supply. It was totally unsustainable, and they actually had to abandon it just 14 years after it was finished. On the flip side, you have Kayakoyo in Turkey. This town wasn't emptied by a lack of resources, but by a really swift post-World War I population exchange between Greece and Turkey. The entire Greek Orthodox population was just forced to pack up and leave. It's almost like the town hit pause forever. The stone homes are still sitting on a hill, looking exactly like a neighborhood just waiting for residents who are never, ever coming back.
Moving on from economic decay and shifting borders, things take a much darker turn. Let's look at cities that were completely erased by war.
The year 1944 marks a really chilling turning point. In just a matter of hours, literally a single afternoon, the quiet French village of Oradour-sur-Glane was completely destroyed by conflict. War didn't just force an evacuation here, it brought total, instant devastation. A vibrant, bustling community was extinguished just like that, turning it instantly into one of the most haunting, abandoned places on Earth.
But the thing about Oradour-sur-Glane is that it wasn't just left behind. It was deliberately never rebuilt. After the war, Charles de Gaulle actually ordered that the ruins be kept exactly as they fell. So today, it serves as this permanent, visceral memorial. It is a really stark reminder that sometimes a city is kept dead, specifically so that history stays alive.
And that brings us to a totally different kind of wartime abandonment, Varosha, Cyprus. Imagine this glamorous, high-end beachfront resort. It was basically a playground for the rich and famous, hosting huge stars like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Then, boom. In 1974, conflict emptied the place out so incredibly fast that it was sealed off behind a militarized barbed wire fence, and it has been locked up ever since. The luxury was abandoned so abruptly that dinners were literally left sitting on tables. There are brand new 1974 model cars still sitting with zero mileage in their dealership showrooms right now, just slowly rusting away.
Now, the scale of destruction escalates even further when we look at Agdam in Azerbaijan. Here, war didn't just lock off a fancy resort, it systematically broke apart an entire urban landscape. During the First Nagorno-Karabakh War, this was a bustling city of tens of thousands of people, and it was rapidly reduced to just empty, scavenged outlines on a map. After the population fled, the entire city was systematically looted for building materials, so it wasn't just abandoned, it was a total erasure. They dismantled it brick by brick until there was practically nothing left.
But, as we know, humans aren't the only destructive force out there. Sometimes, the ground itself makes the brutal, final decision that it's time for everybody to go. Welcome to our next category, When the Earth Turns. For places like Krakow, Centralia, and Wittenum, abandonment wasn't about running out of money, it was a slow, incredibly dangerous eviction. In Krakow, Italy, you had this beautiful medieval hilltop town that was just slowly ripped apart by terrifying repeated landslides caused by failing infrastructure. Nobody wanted to leave, but the cracking earth literally forced them out. Then there's Centralia, Pennsylvania. Back in 1962, a simple garbage fire ignited an underground coal seam, and guys, it is still burning today. It's actively splitting asphalt highways and venting toxic smoke into the air. And down in Wittenum, Australia, a blue asbestos mining town became so saturated with deadly toxic fibers that the government literally erased the town from official maps. They even cut the power just to force the last few holdouts to leave. In all three of these cases, the ground itself served the eviction notice.
Of course, not every city gets the luxury of a slow eviction warning. Let's look at the places that were swallowed by sudden, apocalyptic catastrophes.
1986 was the year that changed absolutely everything for Pripyat in Ukraine. This was a young, model Soviet city. It had brand new infrastructure and the average age of its residents was just 26. But the Chernobyl nuclear explosion turned it into a highly radioactive time capsule, quite literally overnight. Nearly 50,000 people had to be evacuated in a single afternoon. Today, you've got those rusted amusement park rides, like that famous Ferris wheel, just sitting there frozen in time. Classrooms are untouched, with open textbooks totally covered in radioactive dust. It is an unforgettable monument to sudden abandonment.
Just as shocking, though in a very different way, is San Juan Parangaricutiro down in Mexico. Now, this wasn't an invisible threat like radiation. This was a brand new volcano that sprouted literally out of a farmer's cornfield in 1943. It erupted and completely swallowed the city in this slow-moving sea of lava. Luckily, because the lava moves so slowly, everyone managed to escape, but the city itself was permanently entombed. Today, the only thing left is a lone church bell tower rising up above the hardened black basalt rock. It perfectly embodies the idea of a warning carved into the earth. It really makes you wonder how any human structure is supposed to survive being erased by a literal mountain of stone.
So, we've seen ghost towns freeze in time, islands completely empty out, and luxury resorts locked behind fences. But what catastrophic force could possibly erase an entire functioning capital city and claim our #1 spot today?
Well, this brings us to our #1 spot, the ultimate vanishing, the capital of nowhere. That #1 spot goes to Plymouth, the capital city of Montserrat. And look, this wasn't some remote little outpost. This was a bustling, fully functioning capital. It was the commercial hub and the main port for the entire island. But starting in 1995, the nearby Soufriere Hills volcano woke up. It eventually buried the entire city under 40 feet of sudden, massive waves of volcanic ash and mud. The entire population of the city, about 4,000 people, had to flee for their lives. It was an absolute logistical nightmare that left half of the entire island completely uninhabitable.
Montserrat literally became a territory with a government displaced by geology. Think about that, a nation with absolutely no functioning capital city. The exclusion zone is actually still strictly enforced today. The staggering imagery of an entire political and economic center being wiped completely off the functioning map really proves our main point. Sometimes these cities vanish forever, not because of human failures or poverty or war, but simply because nature decides the story is over.
The grand empires, the rich gold mines, the beachfront resorts, and the bustling capitals are gone. But those empty streets are still speaking to us, showing us exactly why 15 cities disappeared forever, and teaching us how incredibly fragile human civilization can be against these massive, overwhelming forces. So now that we've taken this journey, I have to ask, and I leave you with this: out of all these places, which of these vanished cities shocked you the most?